Welcome to Walking Digital Corridors. I am the bearded sales guy, and I am joined by
Jordan Abbott, aka the sales poet. Sorry, bit of a lag there. I think my brain is already in the long weekend, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I don't like the green,
Yeah,
but I can't choose which to go for.
it's good. There we go.
Okay, there's blue's good. Sorry. Yeah, let's. I think you and I, before we started, we said that we were a little tired. We're ready for the long weekend. Anyone listening to this in the US, I apologize. You don't get a long weekend. We get Friday and Monday off, which I'm really looking forward to.
To be fair, I don't mean to burst your bubble. I can't imagine there's anyone that's woken up at 4 a.m. to join us this morning in the US. They may be watching it on repeat, of course.
Yeah. Exactly. They may be watching it on a number of different platforms that we're broadcasting to: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, the bearded sales guy.social. Actually, it's just www.beardedsalesguy.social. So anyway, the topic this morning is lead measure or lag measure. So why don't you kick us off, Jordan? What do you think is the difference between a lead and a lag measure?
Yeah, it's funny, as you said, lag. You got a bit of lag between the audio and visual.
Did I?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So in my mind, a lag measure is essentially the end goal. So it could be closed revenue, it could be number of net new logos added. They're the strategic objectives that we're driving towards. Now, the lead measures are the actions, the high impact activity, the levers that we can pull that will inevitably move us closer to achieving that lag measure. It's something. Sorry, go on.
No. I was going to add something to your lag measure that you finish.
Well, I was just going to say it's something that we spoke about in depth when we first started out, and was it's sort of become ingrained in my psyche.
Yeah. Well, so I would add to your explanation. Now I might be wrong, but the way I view a lag measure versus a lead measure is, like you said, it's the end goal, but also end goal. It could be a near-term goal, like number of qualified opportunities. It could be, it could be the number of calls.
Yeah.
These things.
And to clarify, when you say calls, you mean net new business meetings, not the number of dials you make.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. And the difference for me, the definition, if you like, is a lead measure is something that, and in sales, it's something that we can control. We have 100% control over influencing, and a lag measure is sort of the outcome that we're driving towards. And so I think this works really well for me. A traditional approach with a more modern approach to prospecting. We spend a lot of time performing our social selling strategy. Now, the lag measure is the number of calls that we generate from doing that. But the lead measures are the things like the number of social networking conversations we can insert ourselves into, the number of humanized posts that we can create. And those two things are really important because their lead measures. We can control how many of those things that we do and the quality in which we do them. And B, we know that those two activities, those behaviors, have the biggest impact on the number of calls that we can generate with our target audience.
Yeah.
And then combining those things, we know that we know that by doing that, it becomes clearer to our audience who we are, what we do, the fact that we're genuine, authentic people worth having a chat with, or at least I like to think so. Therefore, the calls that we generate are more likely to progress to a meaningful next step. Now, for me, and I give you that as an example, for me, when I think about the buying process versus the sales process, this is something that has been very close to my heart for many years when I think about pipeline growth and scaling revenue growth, and actually defining what those stages are within the sales process that are more aligned to the buyer process that the buyer has to go through. So there are things like, defining the purchase criteria, right? Identifying a problem and defining the purchase criteria.
Yeah.
So what are the things that we can do as salespeople that we can control, that we can influence heavily, that will increase the chances of a buyer getting to that point? Because we know once they get to that point that we are off to the races. Things like evaluating options and running an evaluation process. So what are the behaviors that we are in control of that we can do that will influence not only the buyer moving into that phase, but they're more aligned to our way of thinking?
It's a good point. I think this leads us quite nicely on to Deal Coach.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that aren't familiar, Deal Coach is a document that contains a number of different questions. On one axis, you've got, or in one column, should I say, you've got questions that you'd ask yourself, and then so seller journey, sales cycle specific, and then on the other column, you've got more buyer milestone specific questions. So, has the buyer introduced you to other stakeholders? That's a sign that they're wanting to move this forward. And obviously, in an ideal world, they're going to be as closely aligned as possible, because the buyer milestone acts as a bit of a trigger for an action that you can then execute upon in order to encourage or to guide the buyer through those various milestones that they have to complete when purchasing a software solution.
Yeah. And there are a selection of those buyer milestones that will be the same for any purchase in any industry.
Yeah.
Where I think the tailoring comes in is where there's specific things that a buyer would need to do, for example, to quantify the commercial value, the differentiating commercial value of going with one supplier versus another.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing that effectively, then how can we expect the buyer to successfully build consensus internally? One of the hardest things to do in any purchase cycle, whether it's buyer or seller side. And so then the question becomes, what can the salesperson do to increase the chances that the buyer will complete that activity?
Yeah.
And once they've completed that activity, understood it, once they've understood it, positioned it effectively with those peers internally that they need to obtain support from to solidify a purchase decision. And there's so many of these intricate little things that need to be done throughout that buyer journey that the salesperson can influence. And where I think the magic happens for me is when we map that out and it becomes very clear in our mind what those behaviors are that the salesperson can do, those lead measures that on a daily, weekly basis increase the probability of making the sale.
Yeah.
Or increase the probability of having a conversation with their target audience, increase the probability of helping to define the purchase criteria, increase the probability of differentiating yourself, building consensus, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think a saying comes to mind. What looks like frustration is often lack of clarity. There may be some people watching this that it's end of quarter for them. Maybe they haven't reached their number, and that number is a lag measure. That's
Yeah.
the end goal. But I think it's so easy as a salesperson to get so distracted by that lag measure, and because you may not have the process, the repeatable, the scalable process in place, that
Yeah.
when you don't reach it, you are frustrated. It's
Yeah.
not a case of, okay, let me look back at the all of my reporting, the actions that I've completed, the things that I've been doing throughout the various sales cycles. What am I missing? What lever haven't I pulled
Yeah.
that would have got me there? And I think to a certain extent, sales, or by and large, don't provide enough support for their salespeople. They don't have, maybe they've got, Challenger or Miller Hyman or Medical in place, but
Well,
they haven't necessarily mapped those buyer milestones and then aligned activities to it.
yeah, I think there's a number of directions we can take this conversation. I'd like to take it in the direction of mental health for a moment.
Yeah,
because the Jeff Risley and the Sales Health Alliance produced the 2024 State of Mental Health in Sales report, and the findings in summary are that 70% of salespeople are suffering with poor mental health, which is up from the year before and the year before that. And so we are officially experiencing a mental health endemic in sales. And the number one issue, if you like, that is highlighted by salespeople is they feel like so 55% basically said they felt that they didn't have clarity and direction in their career path. And when I think about that, clarity and direction is critical when it comes to sales. And to your point, if salespeople, whether you're top of funnel, middle funnel, end of funnel, or even customer success, because customer success are now in this year's report, unless you have clarity and direction on the behaviors, aka lead measures, that you need to be driving towards on a daily basis, and you feel confident that they're going to lead to a positive commercial outcome for you and your customer, it becomes very difficult to keep doing the same stuff day in, day out. And so for me, I think, and I've found as a sales leader, it's critical to map this stuff out so that when you're coaching your team, you're coaching them to those behaviors rather than saying, it's the end of quarter, you need to get this deal closed. Your pipeline's low for Q2, Q3, you need to make more calls. You just need to get in front of your customer. Well, what is it that I need to be doing? And what support are you going to give me to increase the level of quality in which I do that thing?
Yeah.
And also in this same report, I think it was 91% of those 90, I think it was, I'm going to check it in a second, but 91% of those with good mental health or excellent mental health are top performers.
Mm.
And so, I think there's a lot that I think there's a lot that needs to be done in the industry, within the industry, to support businesses, to support leaders, so that they can define these lead measures, these behaviors, and coach their teams to them, because it seems at the moment that they're not, given the data in this report.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think so. I think it was Adam post yesterday, Adam Gray, that shared quite a nice visual, and it was essentially, yeah, there are going to be peaks and troughs. That's inevitable within sales, but as long as we're moving in an upward trajectory in the long term, then that's all we can do, right? And I think by having that clarity over the lead measures, even when you are in that trough, you understand, okay, well, I've been completing these high impact activities to the level that I wanted to, and then it's a case of being accountable for yourself, right, as the sales rep. Okay, well, I've been hitting the numbers, so perhaps it's a quality piece. What can I try here that may influence further down? What are those other things that I can be doing outside of that defined process that's going to have a positive influence? So while I completely agree, sales orgs need to provide more support to their people, there is an accountability piece in the rep by having that visibility and then being able to signpost those areas where, okay, maybe I can try something different here. What can I do to test and optimize the approach? Additionally, but without that foundation, without that knowledge, that clarity, it's like putting your finger in the wind and going, oh, this might work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and having that support and having the time. For me, that's a big one, is the time. You talk about the troughs. For many years, when I changed roles, the trough would be, maybe there was a region that was suffering and there was something that needed fixing, but the trough would typically be, time. It would be, actually, we need more time. The strategy is right. The lead measures are right. We need more time in order to get the nose off the ground and drive consistent performance.
Yeah.
Here's an idea for you. What's your view on trust? So level of trust between salesperson and prospect, or salesperson and customer, and relationship as lead measures.
So I think it's an interesting thought, and I think it's something that really, we do need to be thinking more about. So I don't know if it was you that shared it, the Simon Sinek video, where he's talking about working with the Navy SEALs, and he was basically asked the Navy, how do you choose who goes on SEAL Team 6, the best, the best of the best?
Okay.
And they said to him that they basically drew a graph on the y-axis. It was performance.
Yeah.
So, number of successful missions, that can translate to your business, number of new meetings, amount of closed revenue, etc. And then along the x-axis, it was trust.
Okay.
And the way that they basically summarized it was, on the battlefield, performance; off the battlefield. So, do I trust you with my life? Performance.
Yeah.
Which I may do, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? Along the x-axis in trust.
Okay.
And the findings were that nobody wants that high performer, low trust, right? No one wants them on that SEAL Team 6 because it breeds a toxic culture. What
Yeah.
they'd rather have is a mid performer, but high trust, right? And then it got me thinking about the trustworthiness equation that Scott Noble shared with me. And there's a nice, and it comes from the Trusted Advisor book. There's a really nice summary.
Which book's that?
The Trusted Advisor by David Meister, Charles Green, and Robert Galford. And the trustworthiness equation is basically credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-orientation. And that doesn't mean much on face value, but in this summary, which I'll put in the comments, it sort of breaks down what each of those mean. It's definitely food for thought.
Nice. The Trusted Advisor second anniversary, David Meister.
That's the one, yeah.
Cool. And it's in audio. Nice. Have you read it?
I haven't. No, I've read the summary.
Okay.
I'll put the link to the summary in the comments. So just in case anyone does want to take a little look.
Brilliant.
With the direction of travel, the profession is moving, or should be moving as a result of what our buyers are wanting.
Yeah.
They're wanting trusted advisors. They're wanting guides. So trust should be a key metric for businesses. We just, we've got a ton of metrics that we measure, but nothing in relation to performance, that is, but very little in ways of trust.
Yeah, I do find it astonishing. I think more so now than ever before, as buyer behavior has shifted so much, as we know, accelerated by COVID. And now we're living in a world where the zone of resistance is, a mile high, a mile thick, and it's very difficult to penetrate the zone of resistance. And if there is no pre-existing relationship, aka trust, it's unlikely the buyer is going to invite you in to pitch, or maybe they invite you in to pitch, but they're not going to buy from you. No. It's very difficult to build that trust in the purchase process, given that suppliers get such a small amount of time nowadays.
Yeah, completely agree. But equally, when we're talking about shaping the evaluation and being able to influence that, if you're not on that day one shortlist, if you haven't had that relationship before the buyer's in market, you're not being invited in until they've completed between 62% and 90%. And it's highly likely they've already shaped that evaluation. They've built the purchasing criteria. By that point, it's too late. And we see from the HBR stats that 90% of B2B buyers will choose a vendor that was on their day one shortlist. And the more recent 6th Sense buyer report that found that 84% of buyers will work with the first vendor that they reach out to, that they contact.
Yeah.
And that's because they trust this person that they've reached out to. There's already that relationship there. And it then becomes that mutual journey, right? You're helping the buyer to build the business case, to shape the evaluation, to build the purchasing criteria.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's. I'm conscious of time. Let's draw a line under this week's show, 25 minutes. For anyone that did want to learn more about the Sales Poet and what you're doing with the Institute of Sales Professionals, where can they find you, Jordan?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best place to go. It's where I'm most responsive, I think.
Good. And for myself, it's again LinkedIn, Alex Abbott, or the Bearded Sales Guy, and feel free to check out my Substack, www.beardedsalesguy.social. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. For those having a long weekend, I hope you get some R&R and enjoy yourselves. We'll see you next week. Take care, guys.